Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin spoke to the media today for the last time before the start of the 2024 offseason, and he had some very interesting things to say when it comes to the offensive coordinator search, when it comes to the quarterback situation in 2024, and we're going to be breaking down my takeaways from today's press conference on today's edition of Steelers Talk. But before we get into today's content, do me a favor, click that subscribe button, because every time there's a breaking news story for the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason, when they hire their new offensive coordinator, if they trade for Justin Fields, when they sign players in free agency, we're going to have you covered with breaking news videos for free right here on YouTube. We're also going to have in-depth coverage of both NFL free agency and the NFL draft, both getting you guys ready for that with rumors and target videos, but also in-depth scouting reports on the biggest free agency targets and NFL draft targets for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming up this spring. And then also we got a weekly live show every single week on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And oh yeah, all that is 100% free. So if you love the Pittsburgh Steelers, you want to become an expert on this football team this offseason, do me a favor, click that subscribe button right now. So let's get into my takeaways here from this final press conference from head coach Mike Tomlin. My first takeaway revolves around quarterback Kenny Pickett. And by the way that head coach Mike Tomlin was talking about Pickett today, it sounds like Pickett's going to have another opportunity to prove that he is the franchise quarterback that this team thought that they were getting when they drafted him a couple years back in the first round of the NFL draft. I don't think they're going to straight up replace him. I think they're going to bring in competition. We'll get to that later and who they might bring in as a solid backup to compete with Pickett. But first, let's take a look back here at Pickett's 2023 season, his second year in the National Football League. And listen, man, these numbers are just not good enough. You cannot go into year three and replicate these same numbers. These numbers will have to take a significant leap forward going into year three with a new offensive coordinator coming to town, because, I mean, goodness gracious, those accuracy numbers are not where you want to see it. Also, the big-time throw percentage, not great either, bottom half of the league in that category. The one thing that he actually did really well this year was protecting the football. That's definitely something that's valuable, but he's also going to have to make more explosive plays. The adjusted completion percentage was 37th in the National Football League this year. That's not very good. 28th in quarterback rating and 28th in overall points above replacement, which isn't great as well. So Pickett's definitely going to have to get better. And one area that he's definitely going to have to get better in is in the red zone. This is where quarterbacks make their money, all right? The whole point of the quarterback and having a good quarterback is that he gets your offense into the end zone. And more often than not, you're going to have to get into the end zone via the red zone, and Pickett just has not been good in the red area this season. The accuracy takes a dip downwards, which is the exact opposite that you want to see. It seems like when the red zone windows get tighter there, Kenny Pickett gets more uncomfortable, and he's not able to get the ball in the end zone. It's been a big issue for him. Only 6 touchdown passes this year, and you look at these numbers here, and these are just going to have to get a lot better if he's ever going to wish to be a starting franchise quarterback in the National Football League moving forward. Now, Kenny Pickett's career is not over. I'm not trying to say that he's completely done. He is a bona fide bust at this point, all right? Because there's quarterbacks that have taken a while to really develop into good quarterbacks in the National Football League. Josh Allen took 3 years. Tua took 3 years. Remember, everyone was counting Tua out as a bust when they hired Mike McDaniel, and then all of a sudden you get the right offense and the right offensive play caller, and somebody like a Tua Tagovailoa and a Jalen Hurts in year 3 as well can develop into really good starting quarterbacks in this league. The Steelers are going to hope that they get that out of Kenny Pickett here in year 3 if they bring him back as their starter. And my take on the entire thing here with Kenny Pickett is that I'm rooting for the kid, all right? Mike Tomlin spoke to his intangibles today at his press conference, and I couldn't agree more. All right, he's a great leader. He works hard. He is a great teammate. He's got all those intangibles that you look for in a franchise quarterback, but he's just not putting the production that you want to see on tape. And, you know, he definitely has a lot of issues on his tape that go beyond just play calling. So the things that really worry me about Kenny Pickett is that, you know, obviously the play calling has been terrible here in Pittsburgh the last 2 years, right? Matt Canada ran pretty much a high school, college level offense here in Pittsburgh, and that's just not going to fly in the National Football League. But there is so much on Kenny Pickett's tape over the last 2 years that he could have controlled but didn't. I'm talking about things like accuracy. I'm talking about things like pocket presence and sticking in those tight windows. I'm talking about anticipating open windows in zone coverage. All these things are not based on play calling. All right, you could have the best play caller in the world, and if you're not accurate, if you can't anticipate open windows, if you can't stick in the pocket, you're not going to be good in no matter what scheme is going to be here in Pittsburgh. So Kenny's going to have to get a lot better as a quarterback, and because he has all of these really tough to coach out of players types of issues on his film, I'm really worried that the Steelers are going to be wasting another season trying to get Kenny Pickett to be a franchise quarterback. So if I had to guess right now, I do think Kenny Pickett is going to end up being a bust. No, I've been wrong on these things before. Maybe you bring in the right offense and Kenny Pickett can thrive. All right, but after everything that I've seen on his film and all of the issues that he has that go beyond the play calling and the scheme, just call me skeptical at this point that 1 year in a new offensive coordinator is just going to magically change him into a bona fide franchise quarterback. But I definitely am rooting for him. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section and predict it. Will Kenny Pickett thrive or bust in year 3 of his NFL career? Type T if you think he's going to thrive next year, or type B if you think he's going to bust. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So at some point here, YouTube's going to throw you an ad break. When that happens, take advantage of that time by going down to the comment section, finding that pinned comment at the top of the comment section, and answering today's pinned question. My second takeaway from Mike Tomlin's final press conference here is that the Steelers are going to make an outside hire for their next offensive coordinator. They're not going to be bringing back Mike Sullivan. They're not going to hire Eddie Faulkner. They're going to bring somebody else in here to kind of help develop Kenny Pickett and bring in new ideas. And let me tell you, man, since 2001, there's only been one outside hire at the offensive coordinator position. That was Todd Haley, and that seems like forever ago. So this is definitely a much-needed injection of new ideas and modern concepts into this offense. So let's break down a little bit what Mike Tomlin is going to be looking for in that next offensive coordinator. And this is what he implied he was going to be looking for at his press conference today. Number one, he's going to be looking for somebody outside of the organization so that they can bring in new ideas. We already covered that. Number two, somebody with NFL play calling experience. Now, he didn't say it has to be that. He just said he would prefer a candidate that has had NFL play calling experience, but keep that in mind as you look for candidates here. And then number three, someone whose offense fits the skill set of Kenny Pickett. Mike Tomlin talked about how this offensive coordinator needs to be able to accentuate the strengths of Kenny Pickett's game. So what does that offense look like? All right. So I think that there's four things that you really need to focus on in terms of finding a good fit for Kenny Pickett. Number one, it has to be a QB-friendly scheme. Now, what do I mean by this? I mean a scheme that really breaks things down and keeps the reads simple for the quarterback. I'm talking about things where he doesn't have to go through a full field progression read and expect to get all the way to number 4, all right? You give him like a 1 and a 2, and then you give him a check down, all right? I'm talking about those types of systems where Kenny Pickett, who I don't think is a real elite mental processor, you got to have kind of a simpler scheme for him and something that you're going to be able to get through his reads quickly and get the ball out on time. Number two, I think that you have to get him on the move. One of Kenny Pickett's biggest strengths is throwing the football on the run. We've seen it both directions, whether he's rolling out to his right or to his left. He can flip those hips and throw that football with some nice velocity and even some really nice accurate throws on the run as well. So you got to take advantage of Pickett's ability to get outside the pocket, particularly in the red zone, all right? NFL defensive coordinators usually talk about how it's really tough to stop a quarterback that can scramble out of the pocket in the red zone. So I definitely think you have to take advantage of this skill set and get Kenny Pickett on the move. Number 3, you need somebody that can cultivate an effective run game. You've got Najee Harris. I think they're going to pick up his 5th-year option this year. And you've got Jaylen Warren, who really came into his own this year. If you got a combination of backs like that, and then hopefully they improve on the offensive line as well, in order for Kenny Pickett to thrive, I think because he's not a Patrick Mahomes level talent, because he's not an Aaron Rodgers type of talent or a Josh Allen, you need to have an effective run game to pair with them, and then you got to hope that Kenny Pickett can manage the game effectively and get the team into the end zone when he gets into the red zone. Then number 4 on this list is you got to get those playmakers in space. So you got to get the ball in the hands of George Pickens on those slant routes. All right, how many times did George take one to the house this year when he had the ball in space? It happened a lot, right? And then Deontay Johnson also had some nice yard after the catch type receptions this year as well. I think that this team is built to get their playmakers the ball in space, and you got to find somebody that can do that to help Kenny Pickett and kind of avoid those deeper down the field throws. You want Kenny Pickett to maybe throw it a little bit shorter, but then his receivers and his weapons to take care of the rest for him. So I think that the perfect scheme fit that really fits all of this criteria is a West Coast offense, whether that be a Sean McVay style where it's more 11 personnel, more outside zone, or a Kyle Shanahan version of the West Coast where it's more multiple. You'll see some power run scheme stuff in there. Also, they do some different stuff in terms of personnel. They like to put 2 running backs on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see what Mike Tomlin is looking for, but I really do think that Kenny Pickett could actually be a pretty decent quarterback if he's put in the right West Coast system. So that's what I'm looking forward to here as we get going on this offensive coordinator search. Now, coming up here, we're going to talk a little bit about Mason Rudolph, and I'm going to let you know whether or not the Pittsburgh Steelers should bring him back in 2024. But before I get into that, let's have a word from our sponsor here at Factor. Get started on your New Year's resolutions with today's sponsor, Factor. Factor's ready-to-eat meal delivery service takes the stress out of meal planning and sets you up for success in the new year. Skip the grocery stores and the prep work and the cooking fatigue. Instead, get chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. With over 35 meals to choose from per week, including options like keto, Calorie Smart, vegan and veggie, and more, plus over 55 weekly add-ons, you'll have a ton of nutritious and flavorful options to kickstart your New Year's resolutions. What's even better is that Factor now offers loads of snack options like breakfast, smoothies, juices, snacks, and more to keep you going no matter what's on your busy schedule. Stress less over meal times with Factor's no prep, no mess meals to free up time otherwise spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning up. We all know how much we hate doing those dishes. Just 2 minutes in the microwave. This Factor meal is done for you. You feel like an adult, and you don't have to do dishes at the end of the day. Head on over to factormeals.com/SteelersChat50 and use code SteelersChat50. It's right down there in the bottom right of your screen to get 50% off Factor meals today. That's code SteelersChat50 at factormeals.com/SteelersChat50 to get 50% off today. My third takeaway from the final press conference of Mike Tomlin's 2023-2024 season here is that Pittsburgh is going to bring in competition for Kenny Pickett, and they want that competition to be Mason Rudolph. But at the same time, Tomlin did acknowledge the fact that Mason's a free agent. He gets to do what he wants. Now, if you want to ask me about how I feel about bringing back Mason Rudolph next year, I think he's just an okay NFL quarterback. I think that he's a good backup and a fringe starter that, you know, if he's a backup in this league, he can come in and win you football games. But he's not somebody that's going to be a franchise-level quarterback that can go up against the likes of a Patrick Mahomes, a Josh Allen, an Aaron Rodgers, a Joe Burrow. If Lamar Jackson develops into a playoff-caliber quarterback here, him as well, right? It's just going to be so difficult in a loaded AFC with so many great young QBs in this conference to have a guy like Mason Rudolph, who's a bit limited, in my opinion, in terms of overall talent, to really deliver the goods and get you back to Super Bowls and get you back to winning Super Bowls. You look at the regular season stats from Mason Rudolph. I understand why people love Mason Rudolph. He's a Steelers legend this year because you come in, you have to win all 3 games to finish out the season. Not only does he deliver those 3 victories, victories, but he does it in very impressive fashion, having the second highest completion percentage in the National Football League this year among passers with at least 50 pass attempts, and then in yards per attempt and passer rating, he was number 1. So I see why some people are like, hey man, Mason Rudolph was an elite quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch. Why do you think he can't do it again next season as this team's starter? Well, I mean, first of all, the teams that he played against were just not very good, the defenses that were, all right? The Bengals have the 31st worst defense in the league this year in terms of yards per game allowed. The Seahawks are 30th, all right? So him putting up numbers against the Bengals and Seahawks doesn't exactly inspire confidence in me because those defenses are bad. Now, obviously, Mason Rudolph proved that he can play because you have to be at least pretty good to light up those defenses. But does that mean that he's an elite quarterback now because he lit it up against the Bengals and the Seahawks defenses? I don't really think so. And then although Baltimore's defense is really good, they didn't really play many of their starters in that game. And if you'll remember, at halftime in that football game, people were saying, put Kenny Pickett in, right? So I really don't think that Mason Rudolph had quite as good of a season in the regular season as people want to say that he did. He played against weak opponents. And he played against the backups of the Ravens on defense in Week 18. And then you get into the playoffs where, I said if Mason played well against one or two legitimate playoff defenses, I would consider bringing him back to start in 2024. But that's not what we saw against the Buffalo Bills. Less than 60% completion percentage. He did rack up a little bit of yards there, 229, had 2 tuds, but he had a massive red zone interception. That was a big turning point in that football game. And then the rating at an 80.0. If that would have been his rating for the entire year, that would have ranked 40th in the National Football League. So that's not a very good number either. So when Mason was challenged by a playoff defense, he just looked like a normal guy. He's a fine quarterback, guys. But where I'm at with Mason Rudolph right now is that he's a good and capable backup that can come in and win you football games in a pinch. But is he somebody that you are going to say, hey, man, we are going right behind you. You're leading us to the Super Bowl over guys like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers, and Joe Burrow? No way. I'm sorry. There's just no way, all right? I think that when he goes up against better defenses, it's just not as pretty. I think that Buffalo game showed it. And my prediction with Mason Rudolph here coming up this offseason is that if he can start elsewhere because of this nice run that he went on these last 4 games, great, he'll take that opportunity. But I really do think that those opportunities are just not going to be there for him. And because of that, I actually do think the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to bring him back to compete with Kenny Pickett. And I'm not sure if that's a really good plan for the Steelers right now because from Kenny Pickett's perspective here, he's going to feel the pressure of Mason Rudolph behind him. Every time Kenny Pickett makes a bad throw as the starter next year, the crowd's going to be going, we want Mason. We want Mason. And that's just not good for Kenny Pickett's psyche, okay? You want somebody fresh behind you, all right? You maybe like a Jacoby Brissett or a Ryan Tannehill, something along those lines. But I don't really think that Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph, either of them, are really good enough to take on the gauntlet here in the AFC against guys like I said, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, all these guys, these super weapon quarterbacks. I don't see Pickett or Rudolph taking them on and winning a Super Bowl next season. All right, that's just where I'm at right now. But if you want to go out and get a decent backup here that's not Mason Rudolph, let's say Mason signs somewhere else, some nice options here to bring in for competition for Kenny Pickett are Jacoby Brissett, Gardner Minshew, Sam Darnold, Jake Browning, and Ryan Tannehill. Those are the top 5 names on my list. I'd like to see any one of these guys compete with Pickett for the starting job if that's what the Steelers decide to do. Now, what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comments section. How do you feel about Mason Rudolph? Could Mason Rudolph win a Super Bowl in the NFL as a starting quarterback? Type Y if you think he could, or type N if you think he can't. My final takeaway from this press conference here is that I think it's more unlikely at this point that Tomlin is going to trade for a guy like Justin Fields. Now, I know Mike Tomlin likes the talent of Justin Fields, but with the way he was talking about Pickett today, it really does seem like Pickett's going to be this team's guy heading into 2024. And I listed the reasons why I think that's a bad idea. And personally, you guys know this if you watch the channel, I'm in favor of going and getting a guy like Justin Fields. All right, you take a look at the stats this year. I mean, the completion percentage, adjusted completion percentage, Justin Fields was more accurate this year. He had more yards per attempt pretty much a half yard more per attempt than Kenny Pickett this year. He had double the amount of total touchdowns this year. Now, he does have a little bit more interceptions, but 9 interceptions to 20 touchdowns isn't actually all that bad of a ratio. And then the points above replacement total there, Justin Fields was worth almost 27 more points than Kenny Pickett this year in the aggregate. So I definitely think Justin Fields not only is a better quarterback than Kenny Pickett right now, but Fields has improved as a passer in each of his first 3 seasons, and I think he's going to get even better come year 4, especially if he's paired with the right offensive coordinator here in Pittsburgh. And listen, I'm not in charge of the Pittsburgh Steelers, all right? But if I were, and I had a direct line to Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin, this is the message that I would send to them. I'm done losing in the first round in the playoffs, all right? I'm done with this streak of mediocrity that we've had here in Pittsburgh. And the biggest reason for that, in my opinion, is that the Steelers haven't had a top 15 quarterback that was playing like a top 15 quarterback in the playoffs since, 2017? It's hard to win playoff games when you don't have a really good quarterback leading your offense, and the Steelers haven't had that. And I don't think Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph is the answer to that question. However, Justin Fields, although a little bit risky, right? He's an elite rusher. He's gotten better as a passer every single season he's been in this league. He's got incredible arm talent. He has that dynamic quality to him and to his game where he could potentially take on a Josh Allen or a Patrick Mahomes and straight out-duel them. All right, he has that kind of talent to be a future league MVP, and with the team ready to win right now, with 1 year left on Mike Tomlin's contract, I'm ready to push my chips in the center of the table for a guy like Justin Fields who could absolutely take you to the promised land as soon as next year. And listen, if Fields doesn't work out, you blow it all up, you find a new head coach, and you start fresh. But I'm done living in this world where we have 9-10 wins every single year because we have a limited quarterback, and then we lose in the first round because the quarterbacks and the defenses we're playing are just better football teams because they have the better quarterback. I'm done living in that world. I want to go swing for the fences and hit this grand slam home run, and I think Justin Fields gives the Steelers the best opportunity to do that. But let me know down there in the comments section which quarterback gives the Steelers the best chance to win the Super Bowl next season. Type MR for Mason Rudolph, KP for Kenny Pickett, or JF for Justin Fields. Make sure you guys go follow me on Twitter at Jack_Sperry. I'll give you a shout out on the show. I do it every single show now for all the people that follow me on Twitter. So here are today's shout outs. William, I hope I'm saying this right, Zatolenko Sr. I definitely just butchered that. My producer Chip here is laughing his ass off at me. Then we got iWarner16, Michael Hill, and Ryland. Thank you guys so much for your support. I'm going to be putting a bunch of Steelers film analysis on there over the next several days. I'm going to be putting a bunch of NFL draft film analysis on there over the coming months, getting ready for the NFL draft. So if you want to learn more about football, you want more of my Steelers takes on Twitter, you can check me out at Jack_Sperry. And that'll be it for today's show, guys. Thank you so much for all of your support. I know today was a little bit of a longer one, but I appreciate all the real ones that stuck with me here to the very end. Let me know your thoughts on today's content. Do you think Justin Fields is the answer? Do you think Kenny Pickett is the answer? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section, and don't forget to click that subscribe button.